Let me just pull up my notes. And first of all, I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for joining me today and for being open to discussing the kink scene in Southwestern Ontario, I guess. You're from Kitchener.
I am, yes. Well, Waterloo actually, but yeah, Kitchener-Waterloo. And I've been
Yep,
here for a long, long time. I came here for university originally.
very cool. Yeah, you've mentioned that you started in the community when you were 17 years old. Would you care to talk a little bit about how it started for you?
Sure. My very first girlfriend, back when I was living in Montreal, her name was Judith. She asked me to spank her. And at the time, I knew nothing about any of this. It was all completely new to me. And my parents were European, and they brought me up to believe you never, ever, ever hit a woman under any circumstances. I remember when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, I was just kind of play fighting with the girl next door. My parents sat me down and said, "No. You don't do that. You can do that with boys. Boys can fight. Men don't hit women ever." So I had this drilled into me from a very young age. So when Judith asked me to spank her, it took me a little while to kind of wrap my head around that. But I was willing to give it a try. And I was very, very sort of tentative at first. And she was very encouraging and very positive about it. And she said, "That was great. You can go a lot harder." And so gradually I can ramp that up. And the more she enjoyed it, the more I enjoyed it. And I said, "Yeah, this is actually something I enjoy." And so we started doing that more and more often. And she had some friends who were also had similar interests. So we had a small kind of circle of us who were involved in kink activities. Then flash forward to when I came to university, and by that time that relationship had ended, as relationships do when you're 17. And I met some people here and kind of dabbled and experimented a little bit. And then around the late 1990s, or actually no, early 1990s, I'll get the exact year for you. Hang on. We found that there are a number of us in the Kitchener-Waterloo area who were kinky, and we started doing munches. And the way we found each other was through something called alt.sex.bondage. So way back in the days before what we now know is the internet, there was a kind of simpler system where local computers would call up other computers and transfer email messages back and forth. And you had these discussion groups called news groups. And there was one called alt.sex.bondage. And some of us happened to mention that we were in Waterloo, Ontario. And when we realized there were, 5 or 6 of us, we said, "Well, why don't we get together in person?" And so we did. And that's how it all came to be. And I'll get the exact year for you here. I'm actually looking it up as we speak on the website. Um, I believe it was
So,
93.
so are you aware of like any other munches going on at the time anywhere else in the world?
No, although, well, we weren't aware of any specific ones, but when we were discussing it on this news group, other people said, "Well, these things called munches." They started out in California, actually, way back in the, I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s, and people would get together for hamburgers. They would meet at like a McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it was, and just munch on some hamburgers and talk about kink. And that's how it got started. And we said, well, we can certainly do that here. But over time, people said hamburgers, and decided to go for actual restaurants. So Burger Munch, which is what it was called originally, got shortened to just Munch. And we began in 1993. That's the year. I'm just looking over the announcement
So the
message.
munches began in 1993.
Yep, and have been going ever since. During the pandemic, we went online and had munches in Zoom, but we never stopped having them all the way through.
Oh, that's interesting about the pandemic, though.
Yeah,
That's very cool, very resourceful.
yeah. We tried a couple of things. We tried different technologies, and we eventually settled on Zoom. And actually, we still occasionally meet in Zoom. There are online munches. Usually, in the colder months, we get together for online discussions.
Hmm. So would you happen to know how long FetLife has been around?
I don't actually know that, but I can. I'm seeing it
You
from my
could
computer
probably
as we
Google
speak.
that.
Founded in January of 2008.
2008,
around
January 3rd, yeah.
yeah,
By John, how do you pronounce that name? Copanis?
Copanis. Yeah,
The
and
software engineer from Montreal, Quebec. So that's interesting that this is Canadian. That's kind of
absolutely, my
cool.
life is Canadian from way back in the very beginning. Yeah.
Well, that's some interesting piece of history there. I'm glad we looked it up.
In fact, the group on FedLife called BDSM Ontario was one of the first ones created. In fact, I think it was there practically from day one.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So from there, from your internet days, it kind of went into the camping events, that was when it kind of first started for me at Rainbow Ridge
Mhm.
this past was it July, I think?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you were there, right?
I was. Yeah, it was a great
We
event.
didn't technically meet at that time. We met at the Kitchener Munch, but I
Hmm.
do remember seeing you around.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's kind of how it started for me. I met some people during that time, and it just really kind of opened up my mind, and I was able to step out of some societal boxes, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. But can you
And
talk a
actually,
little bit about the camping events?
sure. I'm actually going to mention from what you told me before with this discussion, your being there was kind of an accident.
It really was. Literally, it really was an accident because I had broken my leg there the day that I arrived. So I was kind of stuck there for 2 months. I couldn't go anywhere. So I don't know if like the stars aligned just so and put me in there for like, to start this new journey. But I'm so grateful that I was there because it really just opened up a new world. And my world was kind of boring for a while. So and now things are starting to get fun and exciting, and I'm meeting some awesome open-minded people. And so for me, it's been really, really positive. And actually, one of the big reasons that I wanted to start this podcast, because I've noticed that there's a lot of new people coming into the community who I'm sure have many, many questions. So, again, I'm so grateful to you for being open enough to discuss these things with me to, hopefully give other people, especially the newer people, some confidence and some education as to, how it all started, and also to help people again break out of those societal expectations and religious expectations and all of these things. So yeah, I'm really glad in that way. Not I'm not glad I broke my leg, but my accident definitely was put me in the space that I needed to be at that time. And
Back
like
in the
for me,
day,
it was awesome.
there used to be an expression, a lucky break. And I think I think
Pardon
this
the
may have been
pun.
one for you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It really kind of was a lucky break because it really did open up my eyes and my world to like a whole different way of existing. And like even like we discussed before, the poly versus monogamy, and even just because I feel like I kind of have always been poly. Not that I have, like I've lived the vanilla lifestyle and the relationship and all that. It didn't work out very well for me, but I
Mhm.
did have two girlfriends back in the 90s. So it's not necessarily like a new thing for me, but like also at the same time, being a part of this community and seeing the openness and all of the different kinks and all of the different interests and all of the different ways of existing in the world, and being open to experiment and being open with our bodies and our sexuality. Like I'm all over that. Like I said, I'm really into stepping out of boxes. So for me, um it kind of feels like home in a way. Like once I was able to get my mind out of that box, it started to feel very me, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear that from a lot of people who are entering the community. And the best analogy I use is it's the world creates this little box for everyone to live in. And inside that box, people are monogamous, people are straight, people are vanilla, and they're leading the life that they're expected to lead. But as soon as someone takes a moment to step outside the box, whatever one of those things they're questioning or exploring, they discover everything else. They discover there's a whole landscape outside of that little box they were in, and they discover possibilities that they may not have ever known that existed before. So I think it's uh, taking that first step outside the box, whether it's realizing that they're not straight or they're not vanilla or they're not monogamous, whatever it is that gets them out of the box, then the possibilities really open up.
I think for me, meeting some good people during the event, and I guess in a way for me that was like getting permission that it's okay to be a little bit kinky and to be able to step out of the box. Like I because even before I chatted with them, like it just wasn't okay in my mind because of the deep indoctrination and the deep religious programming and just the way that our society is. You have to be married and you have to be vanilla and only have sex when you want to have babies, right? And sex wasn't really recognized as even like you're not even allowed to have pleasure, right? So even to step out of that box was really great. That's why I think that a podcast like this and conversations like this are really, really important because it does help us to learn about ourselves and to get to know ourselves and to become comfortable in who we are and to know that it's okay. Like it's okay to be different in this world. It's absolutely okay. And even if other people are going to judge, that's okay. They can judge, but as long as you know within yourself that, you know what, I'm not committing some great sin and I'm not going to go to hell.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Is like, that's huge. I think that's huge. And I really think that people need to hear that. And I think they need to know that it really is okay. And it's not like, what religion told you that it was this big evil Satanist thing. You know what I mean? So,
Right. I
yeah,
mean, society really tries to get people to behave in a particular way, largely through fear. And that fear is pervasive, right? They're terrified they're going to go to hell. They're terrified that they'll be ostracized by everyone. They have all these fears and anxieties, and that governs how they live their lives. So I think giving people the courage to realize that no, it's actually quite great
liberating
out here. It's like leaving the box is not scary. Staying in the box is scary,
is
and that's
scary. Yeah.
that's uh, that's where you find a lot of unhappiness and a lot of bitterness and resentment. That's all living inside the box, right? Uh,
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. It's the people in the world living in fear of, what society is telling them they have to be, and you have to be that, otherwise bad things are going to happen and you'll get judged and you'll get condemned, and so many things. And I think I really think, like, I'm all about people getting their power back, whatever that looks like, whether it's, getting your mind back from an abusive relationship, or stepping out of those boxes and feeling comfortable with your own body and knowing that, oh, God isn't going to strike me down if I'm going to enjoy myself with somebody else or with multiple people, or doing this or that or the other thing. And so I really, really think this is it's really important for people to hear these kinds of conversations and to have the permission to know that it is okay to step out of the box. It's all good. It's all good. Go for it.
Yeah, and I think people are surprised to discover how many kinky people are out there. Like they go to a camping event and go, "Wow, look at everybody. There are a lot of us." So that makes them aware that they're really not alone, that there really are a lot of other people who have the same kind of desires they do, or at the very least, who don't fit into that box, just like they don't fit into that box. And I think that's just knowing that, just being aware that they're not alone is very, very empowering.
And I'm just going to add a little bit more to that too, Bernie, because it's not just a matter of, feeling not alone, but it's also like for me, attending being at the rendezvous and attending the munches and actually meeting the people. Like I feel like such a sense of community. Like everybody is so nice, everybody is very respectful, everybody is very welcoming, and it just like both in Kitchener and here in London and at the rendezvous. And it's really just such a feeling of community, right? Because it is such a small community, really. But the openness that you feel and the acceptance that you feel is really just a very empowering feeling in itself. And I think we all need to feel accepted and like we belong somewhere, like to a community, right? Like, we all have that need and have that desire to be recognized for who we are and to be accepted, with all of
Absolutely.
our quirks and kinks and differences.
And I think one of the fears people have about stepping out of the box is the feeling that they'll be all alone, that they won't have the community they've grown up with. So giving them a new community, an accepting community, I think is what enables them to step outside the box and stay outside the box and go, yeah, I don't need to be in there for community. I found community here with other people who are also different from the people who stay in the box. So I think that's very, very important. The other thing is, I think the reason the community is so accepting is because everyone in the community has had that experience of stepping outside the box for the first time, going to their first munch, meeting their first kinky person, and they all know what that was like. So they're all there to help people do the same. They're going, yeah, now I know how difficult it was to walk through that door. So when someone walks through that door, I'm going to try and make them feel welcome because that's
Yeah.
good for me.
Yeah, and you have, and like even being at the Kitchener Munch, like I was so glad to go. I don't know if I would have gone if I didn't have friends who I met at the rendezvous. I just I have a little bit of social anxiety, so I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go, but since they were there, it felt safe for me to go, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad I went because I met you and I met Dave and so many other cool people, and even the London Munch, I went by myself. I was such a brave girl. I sat there in my car for 20 minutes. And I'm like, I opened the door. I'm like, what am I doing? No, I'm gonna close the door. I'm just gonna drive home. I'm not gonna do that.
Mhm.
I'm just going to go. No, I'm not. I'm just going to sit here for a minute. No, I'm just going to start my car. I'm going to drive home. And finally, without thinking, I opened the door and I stepped out of the car. Next thing you know, oh my God, I'm walking. What the hell am I doing? I'm walking it. Oh my God, I have no control over my body. I walked in, and the moment that I walked into to the back, I was met by Lex is her name. She's known as the Umbrella. She organizes the rope events. Well,
Mhm.
there's her smiley face, and she's so welcoming. And yeah, come on over here, have a seat here at the table. There were three other people at the table. So yeah, I got to meet three new friends, which was really great, and we had a great conversation. Felt very, very comfortable. And by the time that I left, I had a potential play partner.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I had some new knowledge, some new friends, and I remember feeling like, thank God that I went in there. Like, thank God I was brave enough to walk in there. That whole anxiety thing about when you're first entering the community and you don't know anyone,
Mhm.
right? And when you get up enough guts to actually walk in through those doors to a munch, not even to a play party, but just to a munch alone, to kind of get yourself into the community, and how much anxiety that had caused me, which I'm sure a lot of people would probably feel that. um
I know a
but
lot
one
of people I've spoken to who come to their first munch. They say technically it's their first munch, but they came close the month before and the month before that. They would get as far as the parking lot and then check it out and come back the next month and do the same thing. It might take them two or three tries to actually walk through that door. But for a lot of people, walking through that door is a really pivotal moment. It opens up a whole new kind of chapter of their life. They're making new friends. They're having new experiences. So yeah, the hardest part about going to munch is just getting through that door. I remember we used to have munches on the top floor of a local restaurant, like three, four floors up. And people would say, I got halfway up those stairs and turned around, went back down again. So after that, we moved to a place that was in the basement. So at least we had gravity working in our favor, right? So it's easier to walk down the stairs than to walk up. So yeah, but it's hard. It is challenging. Even now, when I think there's much more acceptance around kink. It's one thing for society to be slowly more accepting of kink. It's another thing for people to accept kink in themselves and in their own lives. That's that's what they're really struggling with. It's, do I want to open up this part of myself? It's not going to the munch that scares them. It's what it represents in terms of a
What
new
happens
direction in their
next?
life.
Yeah. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for new people who are contemplating going to munches or to parties or to like even to join FetLife, right? And to um become open to the lifestyle, but like especially that first step, right? When you walking through those doors, just to get to the point where you can walk through the doors.
Right. So, the best advice I can give to everyone is just take a deep breath and relax. You're just walking into a restaurant. You've done that a bunch of times. And yeah, the people there are kinky. So it's not really that different. So take a breath, go, yeah, I'm just gonna do this and be calm. And usually people walk in the door, and I've seen this, I don't know how many times in the all the years I've been running munches. They walk in the door and they look like timid bunny rabbits. They look so scared. But 2 minutes later, they're talking to people and going, I don't know what I was scared about. This is great, right? But it's that initial moment is the
Yes.
hard part, and just getting them over that hump is the challenge. So to anyone listening to this who's thinking of going to a munch, just do it. Just, things that might make it easier, try reaching out to the organizers and seeing if they'd be willing to meet you a little bit early before the munch. Because sometimes walking into a crowd of people can be a little intimidating. Most munch organizers get there, I'd say at least 15 minutes early. So maybe show up early and just say, I'm here for the munch, and a little bit early. They'll say, great, come on in. And that way, you don't have to walk into a room full of complete strangers. They walk into a room and you're already there. That might make it a little bit easier. Consider bringing a friend if you have a friend who you're open with about that aspect of your life. And if you don't have someone who is, see if there'd be anyone who'd be willing to meet you, at the restaurant in that same location before the munch starts and just kind of talk. Um, Things like that. Those can all help, but ultimately it all comes down to just finding the courage within yourself, the gumption. There's an old word, gumption. The willingness to put yourself out there and try something new.
It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking about the London Munch and sitting at the table with these three strangers who I just met. And I did voice that concern, and I did say, I almost chickened out. I almost didn't come in. And everybody's like, oh, we've all been there. We've
Mhm.
all been there.
Yep.
We know exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yep.
So I think that the advice that you have given is really good. And I think a lot of the time our thoughts, our minds are, present a scenario that is very, very different from actually what happens in real life. We see a great big monster of like crazy, freaky people. What's going to happen now? And what does this mean? And how are they going to see me? And are they going to look at me as a weirdo? I mean, but like you have to think that like you're amongst weirdos.
Right.
Like we're all weird together, right? We all have our funk and our kink, and I think that brings us together, and that provides a certain level of comfort and security as well, knowing that you're with, other kinky people who do happen to be very accepting and very supportive and very open.
Mhm. The one thing
Um,
I'll say is that I've seen this a few times. Uh, when you go to a munch, uh, you're looking for acceptance, obviously. Be aware that other people there are also looking for acceptance. So try to keep an open mind. Some people may have very different interests than you do. And the thing is, we're brought together by our kinks. And so you'll meet people you may never have met before, people from all walks of life, all kinds of backgrounds. Just be very open and very accepting. Go into the spirit of, if I want to be accepted, I need to accept other people. That's the deal. So if you meet someone who you might normally go, oh, it's not someone I want to talk to, keep an open mind. Realize they're there for the same reason you are, and let those years or decades of judgment of other people go. Because part of the deal is, in order to not be judged, you have to be willing to not judge others.
Such an important point to bring up, actually, because we live in a world of judgment, right? Like we judge one another based on how we look.
Hmm.
right? So like anything even beyond that is a big like no go zone
Yeah.
type of thing. So and I think overall, like, you know, when people like us, we get together, we do have that in the back of our minds that, you know, we don't want to be judged, so we certainly don't want to judge others. And if we're not aligned with somebody, we don't have to play with them, you know, we can just have conversations or not even, you know, because I mean, not everybody has to get along, but I think, you know, that whole judgment, like in this community, I think people strive extra hard to make one another feel accepted
Yeah.
and to make our kinks feel accepted and to be open about it. So I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a very loving thing. I'm a very spiritual person, which is kind of weird. Spiritual and kinky, I don't know if that goes together,
It
trying to
does.
find a balance in that, but I
You'll
think
find a lot
spiritual
of people
yeah,
are
I think spirituality is about mastering your own energy and your own balance.
Mhm.
So for me, now that in my mind, I know that this is not a sin and I'm not going to go to hell for
Mhm.
being outside of the box, right? Like that's a big thing, but like finding that balance because I'm a very loving person. I like to be loving and accepting with everybody. I want everybody to be happy, and I really am very mindful of not judging people. But I think even if you're not a spiritual person, but in the community, in this community, I feel like most people are automatically going to be non-judgmental and accepting, which I think is part of the power and the magic of this community.
And I think you will find that there are a lot of people in the kinky community who are quite spiritual. It's not unusual at all. You'll also find some who aren't. You'll find some people who, perhaps surprisingly, are still quite religious. And they reconcile those two things in their mind, and they're able to be both things, and that's fine too. So I think you'll find a range of different people. I'm not religious or spiritual at all. But I know a lot of people who are. I know one of my partners um, has a certain spirituality to her, and that's an important part of who she is.
Yeah, it is. I think it's important to find the balance within ourselves, no matter what that looks like. But because of the like the religious programming and things, just even like understanding that or accepting the fact that it's not a sin and that we're not going to go to hell. Like I
Mhm.
still struggle with that sometimes because it's like, you know, I'll think like, man, like I'm a very sexual person and like this, it turns me on, but also like I'm a loving person too. And I, you know, so it's sometimes kind of difficult to find that balance. But again, it's that journey of stepping out of boxes and finding acceptance within the community to be who you are. And I think that's what life is about is figuring out who we are, discovering who we are, and being comfortable with it in spite of, you know, the stupidity of society and the cages that it creates for us in all aspects of our lives. Because really, like it's we live in one big cage,
Yeah.
right? So like even to be able to step out of that box, it gives us a sense of empowerment. Like it gives us a sense of how powerful we are and how magical we are and how we have these amazing bodies that make us feel good and how it's okay to have fantasies and that there's other people in the world who want to fulfill your fantasy or vice versa, you know, because we find joy or pleasure in pleasing somebody else or doing a certain action to somebody that pleases them and or pleases you, like just even, you know, just to find the comfort in our minds, right, as we move forward through this journey. So I think the whole thing kind of comes together really nicely in helping ourselves to find the confidence, to find our own empowerment, to find our power, to find what things make us happy, what things turn us on, and to know that it's okay. Like it's okay to be kinky. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. No
Mhm.
matter what kind of kink you have, as long as you're respectful, you talk about your boundaries, your safe words, your aftercare, you communicate, like all of those things, right? Because it's a lot more than just being kinky. Like there's so much communication that has to go into a scene or playing with somebody or establishing the relationship or the boundaries, right? Like there's a lot of things that go into that too.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask about is the dangers of being on FetLife, especially outside of the community.
Mhm.
And like for me, I won't engage with people who don't go to munches or don't go to the parties. Because it's something I want to feel safe.
Mhm.
And I know that there's a lot of predators out there. So could you talk a little bit about like the dangers of like even being in the community and vetting people and things like that, and what kind of things, especially new people, should be looking out for? Because I'm sure people will join FetLife and it's like, oh, I'm talking to all these people, cool. But not all of those people are in the community. Some of those people are predators,
Yep.
right? So how do we know? How do we keep ourselves safe?
Sure. I think the advice I give to everyone is come out to Munches because it's a safe environment. It's held in a restaurant, it's a public place, and you get to meet people face to face, and you get a lot more information out of a face-to-face meeting than you do online. Online, people can say anything, you don't know whether it's true or not. And there are people who take advantage of the internet and take advantage of people's naivete around the internet to do bad things. So I think you're much safer going to a munch, or at least if going to a munch isn't something you're ready for, at least be munch adjacent. Like go to the restaurant and then very casually talk to someone on the side. Because I mean, we don't have a restaurant exclusively to ourselves. We are kind of in one section, one area. You can go sit somewhere else and then just discreetly talk to a few people if you're not ready to immerse yourself, because at least there you're meeting real people who you can talk to. Meeting some stranger off the internet is a bad idea. It's like just an inherently high risk thing, kinky or not. Just meeting someone on some website or some dating app and you know nothing about them, and then you meet them in some bar or hotel or something. It's ludicrously dangerous. So don't do that. Don't meet up with random internet strangers and hope it goes well. Sure, it might, and probably most of the time it'd be fine, but it's a much higher risk than meeting people in person at a munch.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. One other question I wanted to ask, hopefully we have enough time before it dies on us, but so when you go to a munch, especially like your first one, what is the acceptable conversation and the acceptable attire at a munch? So people
People
know
show
what to
up
expect.
at a munch just wearing ordinary, everyday clothing. Wear whatever you would wear going to that restaurant any other time. So just casual clothing is perfectly fine. You're not going to see people wearing a lot of leather and things like that. You might see the occasional like leather collar or something relatively subtle, but it's a public place, so we dress accordingly. Um, uh, One thing I should mention to anyone listening to this is most munches, certainly ours has this rule, it's 18 and over. It's actually safer to come to a munch in person than to meet random strangers off the internet, which I think would be obvious to most people. It's like, would you rather meet someone in a restaurant with lots of people around, lots of eyes watching, or in a motel room on the edge of town, some stranger you just saw online? I think it's obvious which is safer, but yeah, so I encourage anyone to not meet strangers in motel rooms on the edge of town.
Definitely is a given. And I know just the short amount of time that I've been on FET, I've been approached by a couple, I've been approached by men, like lots of men. Usually women tend to be a little bit more safe, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more with their boundaries. But
Mm.
it's the men that come in and, oh yeah, I'm leaving London tomorrow. Can we meet tonight? Like, no, no, we can't. No. Like, if you want to meet me, you're going to have to start attending munches and parties, and we could meet that way and establish a rapport. And that's a lot of like high maintenance for a lot of people. And then like there's couples who are looking for a unicorn. Even that alone, like you get that on regular dating sites, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
of course it's going to be recommend it's going to happen on FET as well. But like,
For someone who feels that going to a restaurant is too high a bar,
Yeah,
then they're not really invested,
that's exactly it, right?
right?
For me, if it wasn't for the community, I wouldn't be into it either. So,
Mm,
like all of those things that we talked about in regards to the community and the acceptance and even the safety aspect,
mm,
that's what kind of gave me the confidence to move forward. One other question that I missed, and it was about munches. I don't remember if I asked that question or if you had answered. I remember we talked about the attire, but
mm.
I'm not sure if we talked about acceptable conversation during a munch.
Oh, yes. You can talk about anything you like. Think of it as just kind of like a dinner party. Just talk about whatever. If you're not sure what to talk about with someone you just met, ask them about their kink journey. Ask them, how long you've been coming to Munches, how long you've been exploring kink, what has it been like, and so on. In fact, I recommend um, people coming out, try to find someone who has elements in common with you. So, for example, you identify as a dominant woman, try to connect with other dominant women and find out what their journey has been like and how that might inform yours. So people are fine with talking about kink, and they enjoy talking about their own journey. That's always something fun and interesting, and it can be very informative. And you can learn a lot by finding people who who have elements in common with you, and seeing what you can learn from them. But you can talk about anything. You can talk about you know what a great day it was, so sunny and warm, or I arrived here late because I had to drop my kids off at a friend's place, or whatever. Talk about anything you like. Just make regular small talk. Just be aware you can, unlike most places, talk about kink, and it's quite welcome and quite normal.
So, that's interesting because I've heard people at munches who have said that it's not okay to talk about kink during munches, or at least, you have to be very mindful so that other people don't hear, and also the servers who are coming up and
Well,
serving you, so you need to be mindful so that they don't get an earful, because these are public venues, right? And usually the organizers say don't wear fet gear, don't talk too loudly, don't do anything inappropriate, because we're going to get kicked out of these places. So
right. I
because they
mean,
are very public places, we have to be rather mindful
yes.
that we are in the vanilla world, and we have to be very careful with what we
Absolutely.
say. So,
And that's true to an extent. It really depends to a large extent on the physical layout of the munch. If it's a smaller munch and you're like one table in a crowded restaurant, then yeah, I mean people are going to overhear what you're saying, so be a little bit discreet. A lot of the larger munches have at least a section of the restaurant more or less to themselves. But even so, don't be speaking in a loud voice about, I just got this amazing new vibrator. It has all these attachments, and oh, I got this heavy flogger. And don't be so loud that people can't help but overhear from a different part of the restaurant. And if the server comes by bringing you your food, that might not be the right time to talk about your brand new butt plug or for whatever, right? Use a little bit of
common
discretion.
sense,
And
right?
it's a lot of just common sense, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can absolutely talk about these things. Just, be aware of who's around you and uh, don't, I mean, don't keep everything hidden, but don't impose it on people who don't necessarily want to hear about it.
So I guess this will be a good way to start chatting about the parties, because I haven't technically attended a party except for the rendezvous. So I kind of have a pretty good idea of what to expect. However, I think maybe a lot of the new people who are coming in don't know what to expect when it comes to parties. Like even the understanding that a lot of the munches are a process of vetting, right? Like the organizers need to meet you before they can say, oh, okay, you've been vetted and you're good, and so can you talk a little bit about that whole vetting process and why that has to happen and the benefits of it, and just like anything that you can contribute to that part of it?
Sure. I mean, there are a couple of reasons why we ask people to come to a munch before going to a party. One is to avoid exactly the kind of thing we were just talking about a moment ago. Uh, People who aren't willing to invest the time to just go to a restaurant. I mean, that's such a minimal requirement that if they're not even willing to do that, then perhaps they're coming into it for the wrong reasons, and maybe they're not as invested emotionally and psychologically in their journey as other people are. And so perhaps going to a party, they would be there kind of gawking and leering and just creating a bad atmosphere for everyone. And also possibly touching people without consent, things like that. If they're willing to invest the time to come to a restaurant, meet people socially, and get to know them, then that's a good sign because people who aren't willing to do that are probably people you don't want to have at the party anyway. The other reason we do that is for the benefit of the people going to the party. If the first time they encounter other kinky people is in that kind of very energized, slightly sexualized environment, it can be overwhelming. People walk in and they're seeing things they've never seen before, all these strangers doing all these things. It can be too much all at once. Whereas if they've met people socially at a munch and built some connections, they go, oh yeah, these are just ordinary people, they're just like me, it's fine. Then when you see them in that other context, you go, oh, there's Debbie. I met Debbie at the munch. She's great, and now there she is doing stuff. That's okay. That's just another side of Debbie that I'm seeing. I see her as a person who does things rather than just a body at a party, if that makes sense. So it makes it easier for the people attending their first party, because there are people that they know, and it's not an overwhelming experience. And it's good for the party itself because we kind of weed out the people who probably shouldn't be there.
Right. One thing that was kind of cool for me to know, like I said, I haven't been to a party, but I was thinking about possibly attending the nano party.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit nervous about it. I don't know everybody. I haven't been to one of nano parties yet. Um, but when I was speaking with Dave,
Mhm.
who is, I believe, the organizer,
He's one of the two organizers, yeah.
yeah, he said that it was absolutely okay to come in just to watch,
Mhm.
which was really good for me because it really took the pressure off that I don't have to play if I don't want to. And I don't think I want to at first, unless maybe
Mhm.
I come with people that I want to play with specifically. Um, but yeah, I thought that was kind of important just to know that, you know what, it's okay just to go and just to watch. And also the fact that there are um, um, options to be able to volunteer. I'm like, let me volunteer for the whole 4 hours. Okay with that. He's like, why would you want to do that? Because it's a comfort thing, because I need to have something to do
Mhm.
so that I don't feel uncomfortable. It's for my own anxiety. I've thought about that, and he's right. I certainly don't want to volunteer for 4 hours. I'm okay to volunteer for 1 hour, but
Mhm.
it's still really a, a great option to have, especially for those of us who are maybe a little bit nervous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's n normal to be nervous going into an environment you haven't been in before. But remember, you were nervous going to your first munch, and that worked out fine. I think the same thing will be true here. I mean, it's you're going to be seeing things, people doing things, and that can be a little bit startling, I guess. I know I had a vanilla friend who was curious about kink, and she asked if she could come to a party, and I said sure. And she said it wasn't the physical activity, it was the sense of emotional connection between the people who were playing. She felt she was seeing something very intimate between them on an emotional level, and she was a very sensitive person that way, so she found that almost more overwhelming than the physical aspects. But the nice thing about a party like that is there's usually an area where people are playing, and then there's a social area where people aren't. So you can kind of moderate yourself, if you will. You can kind of go watch something for a while. If it's a bit much, go back to the social area, and you can regulate your own exposure level to kinky activity. And there's another thought I had. I forgot what it was. I should have made a note. Oh, about volunteering. Yeah, that's a great idea. Because for a lot of people who identify, like one of my partners identifies as an introvert. So she finds going to social events very challenging. But if she has something to do, it's much easier. So if she's, helping with signing people up for equipment, or if she's helping people sign into the door, things like that, she has a role to play. She's way, way more comfortable about that than just kind of mingling. Whereas I'm an extrovert, I'm happy to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere about anything. So we're a little bit different that way. Yeah, but I think a lot of people, for some reason, have this assumption that if you go to a party, that you have to play. And I've never been to a party in all my kink experience where that's the case. Uh, about half the people play, and about half the people don't. And I know this because the party that you're talking about, Nano, is one that I ran for 14 years before giving it over to Dave and Ragnar. So I was able to observe firsthand how many people sign up for the party, and of those, how many play, how many don't. And you need to keep track of that so you know how much equipment you need to have at the party so that everyone gets a chance to play. And so, yeah, it's about half people watching, half people playing. And that's fine because people who go there to play like the idea of people watching them. And people who go to the party to watch like watching. So it's exhibitionists and voyeurs kind of meeting each other's needs, so to speak. And it works out pretty well. So yeah, when you go to a party, in fact, my recommendation to new people is if it's your first party, don't play, just watch. And some people go in thinking that and they get caught up in the moment and they get so excited by what they're seeing. But you can make a deal with yourself. You can promise yourself that you're not going to play at your first party. You're just going to watch. And that way, you'll be able to relax and not move too far too fast. Another piece of advice I would give to people who are new is take your time. Like people have all these fantasies and desires in their heads, and then they find there are other people who have these desires too, and they want to do all of it right away, like first weekend, do it all. And there's no reason to do that. Spread it out. Take your time. Move slowly. Enjoy the kink journey. It's not about getting to a particular point. It's about experiencing each new thing in its own time. So yeah, I would say move slowly, and that includes not playing in your first party, your first two parties, first three parties. And some people go to parties constantly and they never play because that's
Mhm.
not why they're there. They're there to socialize, they're there to watch other people play and maybe learn from watching those scenes and going, oh, that's something I might like to try with my partner when I get home, or that's something I would never try, and so on. So just learning about kink by watching people do it. The more general observation is in the world of kink, you never have to do anything, right? That's the rule. So you don't have to play at your first party. You never have to play ever if you don't want to. It's all about consent, and you choose what you do and what you don't do always at a party or anywhere else. So there should never be an expectation that, oh, I'm going to be expected to play or whatever. You're never expected to do anything.
I think that takes a lot of pressure off, especially like for the new people. Although I can see how people might want to get, excited and stuff, but still to have these conversations and to know what to expect is great. So another question that I have is actually also about what to expect at parties and like so what like if okay so say you want to have a scene with somebody and say you want to you're interested in some props, some toys or whatever. So how would you go about organizing that? Like how would you go about organizing a space? Like what about if you wanted to bring your music with you because you want like I like music, so I need my music. So I have like my speaker that I'd want to bring with me, and I'd want to have like a space where I can hear my music. And like is that something that's a possibility? Like what would that whole thing look like, I guess,
Sure.
is the question.
It would depend on the party. Every party is different, and part of it is the layout of the space. Generally speaking, there is a play area where there's equipment set up. So, spanking benches, St. Andrew's crosses, posts, suspension rigs, whatever. And then there's another social area. Within the play area, there's usually sort of kink-friendly music playing already. if you have music you would like to listen to, um, it my advice would be maybe to bring earbuds so that you can listen to your music. But of course, you also have to be able to pay attention to the person you're playing with and hear their safe words. So you don't
Yeah,
want to have like big, headphones on that are going to muffle all the
yeah,
sound. You still want to be able to hear and connect. So I would say it depends. Now, there are parties I've been to, and I don't think Nano is one of them, but there are parties that are broken up into a lot of smaller spaces. Quite often, parties in people's homes are set up that way. So you have a number of rooms that are set up for different kinds of play. And if you're in a room like that, of course you can bring your own music on your phone or what have you, and that's great. But at a big play party, there usually is music, and it's it's sort of unobtrusive music, I would say. If the person running it is good at what they do, it's like the background of a film score. You don't
mhm,
notice music. You would notice it if it weren't there, but you don't consciously think about the music. Um, but yeah, that's a tricky one. If you have a particular soundtrack you like, that might be difficult because you can
yeah,
imagine if you have five people playing at once and they're all playing their own music, it would just be
yeah.
chaos, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's just, I think, for me personally, like music gets me in the mood, like it gets me into a zone. I like the beat of it. So, like for me, it's probably not a thing that most people are going to need. That's just something for me that's important for me. So, thank you for answering that question. Um, okay, putting the music aside. So, say you want to play.
Mhm.
So you go in, you want to play, and you want to have some toys, and you want like maybe a spanking bench or one of the tools that you guys have available. So like what would that look like? When would you sign up for the space? When would you sign up for the scene? How would you go about signing up for the props?
So again, different parties do it differently. The way Nano works is we have a table set up with a sign-up sheet, and so you can go there and say, "I'd like the left hand cross, whenever it's available," and they'll write your name down on the list of people who are waiting for that piece of equipment, and then you just kind of keep an eye on it, and when it's available, you go up with your partner and your toys and you play. So there's equipment in terms of furniture that you have to kind of reserve because there are only so many pieces and there are lots of people at the party, so it needs a little bit of organization. So we have a sign-up list. In terms of toys like floggers and canes and paddles, that kind of thing, people tend to bring their own just because from a hygienic standpoint, it's better not to be sharing toys with different people. Um, so yeah, I would say that bring your own toys. Also, if you bring your own toys, you already know how to use them. So that's good. You're not picking up a toy for the first time and going, "Oh, I wonder how this works," and then kind of figuring it out as you go. That's not ideal. So I would say, yeah, bring your own toys, but the equipment is booked by reservation. And also, generally speaking, bring your own partner. Now, people do what's called pickup play, where you meet someone there, you negotiate and then you do a scene. I do that quite a bit. Not as much as I used to, but I do it. It can be fun playing with someone new, but it requires a lot of negotiation because you know so little about each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I think for me and probably for a lot of new people coming in, I think that initial conversation and setting of boundaries and safe words and all of those things, and even just for establishing that rapport, right?
Mhm.
It's time consuming, right? Like there's a lot of communication that has to happen before you actually go and play. So yeah, it's good to know that, you can just go and meet somebody and play. And it's also good to know that, it's also okay to bring your own play partner. I think that's pretty important.
Or
Okay, and
both. Like I'll go to an event with one or in some cases both of my partners and play with them and also play with other people there as well. So it's not either play with your partner or play with other people. You can do both of those things.
right, right, right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really good to know. So what is allowed and what is not allowed at, say, a nano party?
Sure. And again, as I keep saying, and I sound a bit like a broken record, every party is different. At nano, even at nano, it varies from party to party because it depends on where it's being held. So things like how much sexual contact is allowed will vary from one party to another. So be sure you check the rules, and they're always made available. Usually they're emailed out to people who are attending, or they're posted at the party itself, or both. And just be aware of what is and isn't allowed. Generally speaking, there are two types of parties: those that allow actual sex on site and those that don't. And so just be aware of which type of party you're at, and behave accordingly. I think a lot of places that do allow sex usually have a separate kind of quieter area for that. So there isn't a lot of actual sex in the play space, although that's not impossible. Again, depends on the party. Um, so yeah, and I mean, we talk about sex as if everyone knows what we mean by that, and that's not really the case. I mean, everyone's definition of sex is a little bit different,
Hmm.
because the exact sexual activities they engage in are different, and they might engage in certain sexual activities with one partner and a different set of activities with a different partner, um, and they might have different rules and guidelines for each scenario. So find out what the party rules are, find out what your partner is comfortable with, and kind of the intersection of those two things, plus your own interests, that determines what you can do.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you also talk a little bit about aftercare and
Mhm.
what that looks like?
Sure. So when you play with someone, and not necessarily at a party exclusively, but whether it's at a party or privately or anywhere, anytime you play with someone, it can be a very intense experience. And you want to make sure that once the experience is done, you don't just kind of walk away and abandon them. You want to maintain some sense of connection, and ease out of that experience more gradually. So figure out, ideally, before you play with someone, what their aftercare needs are. Do they want you to hold them? Do you want a blanket put over them? Do they need water? What do they need after they play? And if they're new to kink, they may not have the answers to those questions themselves. They may not know what their needs are. So get the best guess and kind of adjust as you go. Aftercare, I think, is really important. That said, not everyone requires a lot of aftercare. The previous nano that I went to, a couple of people wanted a lot of aftercare, a lot of connection. Other people said, no, as soon as the scene's over, I'm good. I'm usually just very up and floaty and ready to play again with someone else. I said, that's great. So you kind of work that out beforehand. The other thing is, if you're playing with someone who has a long-term committed partner, you should ask whether you should be providing the aftercare in the scene, or whether you should bring them to their partner who would provide the aftercare. And the reason I like to ask about that is because aftercare is quite often a bonding experience. You get very close to someone. You've just been through this physically and emotionally intense experience, and then there's this bonding that happens. And it can be confusing for some people because they're forming this emotional bond with someone who they really just met earlier in the evening. And meanwhile, their regular partner is, across the room, and it can be a little awkward. So one question I usually ask is, should I provide the aftercare, or should I turn you over to your partner to do that? And the answer is different for everyone.
Hmm. Such a good answer, Bernie. Thank you. Can
Thanks.
you can you go a little bit deeper into like you mentioned, like a blanket or water or whatever?
Mhm.
Can you mention all of the things that you can think of that could potentially be involved in aftercare so that people kind of have a better idea of the whole scope of it? Like we know the importance of it, but what could that look like potentially for people?
I think the reason it's important to ask people what their aftercare needs are is because it is so varied. From no aftercare needed at all the way to, like, just holding each other for 20 minutes or a half hour. Whether it's comfortable touch, like hugging someone, holding someone, whether it's talking to them, whether it's putting a blanket around them. It's going to be very, very individual. And again, for people who are new to it, they may not know what it is they need exactly.
Yeah.
After seeing, they may not necessarily be in a good headspace to articulate what they want. So my default is throw a blanket over them. If they don't want it, they can take it off. Offer them water, and 9 times out of 10 they'll want water. And just talk to them a bit and ask them how they're doing, ask them how they're feeling, and get some feedback. And I also like to follow up the next day. If it's not a regular partner of mine, if it's someone I've played with at a party, I usually reach out to them the next day on FetLife or by email or however, and just check in and see how they're doing. Because right afterwards, they can be floaty and wonderful. And the next day, they might be going, oh, I'm feeling kind of down and kind of, I had such a high during the scene, and now it's over.
Drop.
Maybe, yeah, it's dropped. That's what it's called. That feeling of, wow, I now know how good things can be, and now my normal life is like down here somewhere, and it can be challenging. So I like to reach out, and if people say, yeah, I'm feeling really droppy, I'll make the offer of getting together for coffee and just kind of talking to them and connecting again. But again, it's so individual.
Mm. Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. It's kind of interesting how you read my mind because I think the whole sub-dom drop is a
Mhm,
really, really important issue. It's something that I had no idea about until I chatted with my friends at the rendezvous.
mhm.
And as they started talking about it, I'm like, I never even would consider that something like that would happen. But now that I know that it does, um, right, and being new and not fully understanding it, but understanding the importance of it, I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about why it happens and how like you said, you'd call somebody or meet for coffee, but how can we support one another, whether as a sub or as a dom, how can we support one another when that happens, when that drop actually happens? Like what are the typical ways that that situation is dealt with? And I'm sure it's different for everybody, but I think it's such an important topic, so anything that you can contribute to that would be awesome.
So yeah, part of it is purely physiological. It's a biochemical process, because during a scene, the if it's an impact scene, for example, or a scene involving some kind of pain, which not all scenes do, but if it's a scene that does, your body produces endorphins in response to that. If it's a scene that you find emotionally arousing, it'll produce adrenaline, and both of those kind of energize you, right? And they give you a kind of euphoric feeling. So when the scene stops, all of a sudden your body has to restore itself to a kind of equilibrium, and it can throw people off, especially if they've never experienced that before. It can have some symptoms that feel almost like a mini depression, right? Or it might come out as some feeling of fatigue or anxiety. There are a lot of different forms it can take. Again, not everyone experiences drop, and everyone does experience it differently. Um, but I would say going from this biochemically induced high to not having that. Someone described it as almost a kind of withdrawal, if that makes sense. They're going through withdrawal. Their body is going, oh, but I had this amazing high. Where did it go? What's happening? Why am I not feeling that? I feel awful right now. That's that's just a normal reaction to your body's chemistry changing. Um, it's a lot easier if you have a regular partner who you have daily contact with, because you can manage that with them. But if you're dealing with someone who you met at a party and don't really share a lot of time with, that can be more challenging. But hopefully they have people in their life who can help them through that. It gets easier over time. I know some people find their worst drop was the first drop. The first time they go through that, they go, "Wow, that's intense." But after a while, they kind of, the more they play, the more they kind of have that expectation of, yeah, I'm probably going to be a little bit droppy, but it's totally worth it.
Hmm. Wow, very interesting. Like, things like that, the vanilla world doesn't even consider, right? Because
That's true.
yeah,
Although, that said, I mean, orgasm produces a lot of those same feelings, that same rush. And imagine if you had great sex with someone and then they said, "That was fun, bye, see ya," and you're kind of left alone. That feels kind of
oh, that's a good way to describe it, actually.
right. It's not a great feeling because you had this wonderful intimate bonding experience with this person who gave you these amazing feelings, and then they're just gone.
Um, so
That's
that's
not
basically
ideal.
what it is.
Yeah,
It's an ending. It's
it's
almost
an
like a
ending.
grief process.
A little bit. I mean, I had a friend who said, "Well, the solution is just keep playing, right? Don't just keep riding that wave. Don't stop." But of course, the practicalities are we have lives to live. We can't be playing 24/7. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Wow, like we covered everything that I wanted to cover.
great.
Good job. That was amazing. I'm sure
You do
more.
good job. You too.
Oh, well, thank you. I think we have a good dynamic between us. We
Mhm,
definitely have a good conversation. There's a good comfort level between us, and I think we're both pretty open,
mhm.
which is awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention that you think is important?
Let's see. If people are not on FetLife, they should probably join it because it's kind of like a Facebook for kinky people, and it's where all these parties and other events and munches get announced. So if you want to become part of the kinky community, that's really one of the first steps I'd recommend. And when they join FetLife, look for discussion groups that are in your own geographic area. So where I am in Ontario, there's BDSM Ontario, and that's a good place to start. And there might be several local groups, and that's great too. Join all of them, and that way you can find out what's going on, and you can also find people you can reach out to and keep in touch with. So I'd say definitely join FedLife. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and it's like as I say, Facebook for kinky people.
Very, very cool. Um, Also, would you be okay with people contacting you, like especially new people with quite about questions about nano or like
Happy to.
lifestyle or anything? I really appreciate you being so open
Mhm.
today. That's awesome. And I think it would be good for people to know that you are also open to supporting them in their new journey as well.
Yeah, so wherever you post this, feel free to include my FetLife handle. It's my name, Bernie Roll, Roehl. Um, but yeah, just include that, and people will be able
What,
to find me pretty easily.
think I might, and I think as I move forward with the journey, I'm sure questions are going to pop up. Maybe, folks are going to have some questions that they might like to ask as well. So I'm really, really glad for you being so open about it. And I sure hope that we could meet again because I really think there was a lot of value in chatting with you today. You've really provided a lot of information. You were very open and candid about everything. I think people kind of have a better idea of what they're getting into, and I think the most important thing is community, and the fact that if you submerge yourself in the community, it's more of a safety thing for you. And I think feeling safe, especially in this lifestyle with a bunch of predators all over the place, is really super important. And I think many times people might not want to venture here because of the whole safety thing. So the fact that there is a safe community, a safe space, that there is FetLife, that there are educational workshops, that there are parties, that there are munches, and opportunities to meet and stuff like that is a thing of beauty. I think that would provide comfort and just that feeling of safety. So I think you guys have done an amazing job with building this beautiful community. And we've got like less than a minute left.
Well,
So,
in that last minute, let me thank you for having organized the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'd be happy to do it again in the future.